Good evening, everyone. Let me apologize ahead of time. I am actually a little under the weather myself. So if my voice is a little raspy or I start coughing, I'll get it together. I have an asthma flare up going on right now, but we will get through this tonight. So as I said, I have been a member of Gethsemane for 22 years. I also am the CEO of Faith Plus Works Consulting, as well as the founder of Roadmap to a Full Ride. So tonight, I will be sharing some nuggets and discussing breaking the cycle of credit card and student loan debt. However, before we get started, we have to clearly define what a cycle is. So a cycle is something that is repeated or it happens over and over again. Until we understand what we're doing as a cycle, we definitely cannot change it. So for tonight's purpose, we are talking about the cycle of credit card and student loan debt. And some of the reasons why many of us fall into these cycles are as follows. One, lack of knowledge. Clearly, maybe no one ever taught us, okay? Number two, learned behavior. Maybe that's all we know. Maybe your parents had credit card and student loan debt, so now you're in the same boat. And as a result, your children are now also falling into the same cycle. Or number three, bad choices and bad habits. Regardless of the reason why you're in credit card or student loan debt, breaking the cycle starts with the second letter in the word cycle. And if you look right there on the screen, that second letter is Y. Breaking the cycle has to start somewhere. So why not start with you? Okay. We've all heard the saying, when you know better, you should do better. So with that being said, let's get started. Let's go to slide number 1. All right. In order to break the cycle of student loan debt, we must figure out what type of shopper or buyer we are. Are you an impulse buyer, a need-based shopper, or a bargain shopper? Now, not always, but a good portion of the time, impulse buyers are the ones who usually end up in credit card debt because they go on swiping sprees, swiping their credit cards here, there, and everywhere. So let's look at the definitions. An impulse buyer, as stated on the screen, the decision to purchase is spontaneous. They have no set agenda or no shopping list in mind. Number 2, a need-based shopper, the decision to purchase is specific and intentional. They know exactly what they want or need for an occasion, a price point, or etc. And number 3, a bargain shopper. The decision to purchase is based upon price. They usually want to feel as if they've gotten a deal. So with these definitions, I definitely want you guys to figure out by the end of the call which category you fall into. I am by no means myself an impulse buyer. I am more so a need-based shopper. Okay. Slide number 2, please. All right. So let's talk about what should I charge on my credit card? All right. So as you see, bullet number 1 is emergencies. If you do not have enough money saved in your emergency fund, yes, we should all have an emergency fund. However, if you do not have enough saved in your emergency fund, then this is when you should purchase an emergency on your credit card. An emergency could be a car repair, an unexpected medical bill, or something of that nature. Not a purse that you saw, okay, and you just don't think you can live without it, or a trip that wasn't planned and you found out some other friends were going, and so now you're willing to put that on your credit card. That is not an emergency, okay? The next thing, anything I can pay off within 30 days. The credit card billing cycle is a 30-day cycle. So anything that you can afford to pay off within 30 days, that is something you can charge on your credit card. Travel, such as airfare, hotels, rental cars, appliances and electronics, and gas. These are all things that you can get reward points for. So once again, though, if you can't afford it, don't swipe it, don't put it on your credit card. I am a big traveler. Traveling is probably my favorite thing to do. And so I budget typically 2 to 3 trips a year. So anytime I'm putting travel on my credit card, It is definitely something that I can afford to pay because I already have the money saved in a special account in order for me to be able to travel. So I am making those purchases and paying them off within a 30-day cycle. Now, reward points, I tell people if you're going to get a credit card, and I usually only recommend one major credit card. If you're going to get a credit card, I typically say do your research to find out what that credit card offers. There are so many credit cards now where you can earn reward points such as cash back. You can buy gift cards. You can get discounts for free travel, airline miles, and things of that nature. Now, when you're trying to establish and build credit or increase your credit score, sometimes you may want to put your monthly expenses on your credit card. These are things you typically have the money for every single month. So charging them and paying those items off monthly helps you build your credit or increase your credit score. So some of those things would be, for example, streaming services. If you have a YouTube account or Netflix or Hulu or something like that, that's a streaming service. Your cell phone, internet, and cable, as well as your car insurance and your homeowner's insurance or renter's insurance. These are all things that typically should already be in your budget that you're budgeting for monthly. So in the event you are charging these things on your credit card, once again, these are things that can be paid off within a 30-day period because you already have them as regular monthly expenses. Next slide, please. All right, so this is a word a lot of people don't like to hear, but a budget is absolutely necessary in order to keep yourself out of getting into credit card debt. And so basically what a budget is a written plan on how you will spend your money. Next slide, please. And I often tell people all the time, a budget is not it's not a way to penalize yourself. It's definitely a way to establish financial freedom and good credit. And so why should we have a budget? One, it helps control our spending, okay? It keeps track of our expenses. It helps us save more money because as I mentioned on a prior slide, we honestly should have an emergency account, a savings plan where you have a certain amount of money set aside in the event emergencies pop up. And so even if an emergency pops up, you could use the money out of your emergency account versus putting that on your credit card. It keeps us focused on short-term and long-term goals. It helps us prepare for emergencies. It helps us stay out of debt and or pay off debt. And it helps us make better financial decisions. So with the holidays coming, quickly approaching, I know some of us go all out for Christmas, okay? And we're buying all of this stuff and spending all of this money. However, we must be mindful of what we're planning to spend and ensure the purchases are in our budget. Otherwise, it might take us 6 months, 12 months, or even longer to pay off what we charge for the holidays. And honestly, that just makes no sense at all. Next slide, please. So what typically should be included in a budget, okay? So your housing, okay? So whether that's a house mortgage or it's an apartment that you're paying monthly, your utilities that it requires to run your home, groceries, miscellaneous spending is typically things like entertainment, getting your hair done, self-care might be a massage or a pedicure or a manicure or a gym membership, whatever you determine to be self-care. Your cell phone, most of us have cell phones this day and time. Your car payment, your car insurance, your car gas. If you have children, your child care, your tithes, if you're going to church, okay? And if you believe in God, all right? Credit cards, okay? So we do know that some of us actually do have credit card debt. And so you can't be making the minimum payment thinking that you're ever going to pay that credit card off. So let's just say the minimum payment on your credit card is $50 a month. It would probably be a lot better if you could pay $100, $150 so that you can hurry up and get that credit card paid off. So a credit card, if you have a credit card, you need to put that monthly payment, whatever it is you can afford to pay, inside of your actual budget. Life insurance, savings, and an emergency fund. So savings and emergency fund are two different accounts, okay? So an emergency fund, like I said earlier, is in the event your car breaks down, you have unexpected medical bills, a partner loses their job, and so now you're down to one income. You should typically have about 3 to 6 months of savings, okay, inside of an emergency fund. Savings is just regular savings. That's something that you might use in the event you do want to get something special, you want to splurge a little bit, or you're just building it for a special occasion. For example, like I said, I love to travel. So I do have an account where I typically am putting money in there just for the purpose of traveling. Next slide, please. All right, so I teach at a college, and most of the time I'm getting freshmen, first year straight out of high school, and they have absolutely no idea about budgeting, financing, planning, investing, or anything. And so I came up with this acronym to kind of help them decide whether or not they should purchase something. And so the acronym for budget, okay, is B, buy what you can truly afford. Okay, you understand what you have coming in and what's going out on a monthly basis. D, don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Okay. G, get disciplined. E, everything you want is not necessary. And T, treat yourself sometimes, but don't overdo it. So I'm going to talk about each one of these. Okay. And so B, once again, just because your friend can afford it doesn't mean you can afford it. Okay. So buy what we can afford. All of us are at different wavelengths. We're making different kinds of money. We're at different stages in life. Okay. So buy what you can afford. Understand what you have coming in monthly and going out. Because if you're just swiping, and you have no idea what your monthly expenses are, nor what you're bringing in. So in my particular situation, I retired about 13 months ago. And so my income looks a little different than what it did when I was working for the federal government. So I still have to figure out how to budget, which is a lot harder than what it used to be because my money fluctuates as a full-fledged entrepreneur and as a professor as to what I'm going to make every other week. However, I figured out how to make a budget with what I have coming in conjunction with what my husband also has coming in. Okay. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. We need to worry about our own situation, our own finances. We absolutely cannot be concerned with what everybody else is doing. I don't know if y'all know people where somebody go get some new car and next thing you know, they have a new car. Or somebody else go get some new job. Next thing you know, this person has a new job. I've always made it my practice to worry about Keisha and what Keisha and her family is doing, regardless of whatever else is going on around me. Get disciplined. This is the hardest part. Getting disciplined is the absolute hardest part because until we are able to practice discipline, we're not going to be able to do a budget. Okay. And so just to give you a real life scenario, there's a running joke, okay, in my family and amongst my friends, and it says something like this: Keisha ain't doing or buying nothing that isn't in her budget. Well, it's a joke, but it actually is true. If it's not in my budget, I'm pretty much not going to buy it. So this past Sunday, after church, a couple of my chicas, my girlfriends, and I decided we were going to go to brunch. Me going to brunch was already in the plan, already budgeted for. So I absolutely knew that was happening approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago. However, going to Marshall's, okay, after brunch was not originally in my plan. However, two of my friends decided they wanted to go to Marshall's. And so I definitely joined them. I did. I went with them to Marshall's. However, I helped them select items. I helped them make final decisions on what they wanted to purchase. And when they walked out, they had a bag or bags, and I walked out with me, myself, and I. And the reason for that was shopping at Marshall's was not in my budget. Okay. Definitely, I've mastered discipline because I am not pressured by what anybody else is doing. And I know I am going on a trip in approximately 37 days. So any extra money I have will be going towards my trip and not frivolous spending. Okay. So that's what discipline looks like. No matter what's going on around you, what everybody else is doing, you stick to your overall goal and your overall objective, which is not always easy, but necessary if you want to have financial freedom and financial success. All right. And again, everything you want is not necessary. We all know at times there's things that we really, really want. And if we want it bad enough, is the objective is not to go and swipe it and put it on a credit card, but to actually save for it and then go buy it that way. And then treat yourself sometimes, but don't overdo it. If all we're doing is working, and or saving, and paying bills, that's not fun. Okay. And so we definitely want to make sure that in the process of us gathering and earning money and living, that we still allow ourselves some time to have fun and treat ourselves from time to time. Next slide, please. So now that we've talked about all of that, let's actually talk about what we need to do to break of student loan debt. Okay. So how to avoid getting student loans. Number one is to start planning early. So some people might say, well, what's early? Okay. So if you have children, typically the plan to start can start as early as middle school. And people might say middle school, how do you start planning for college in middle school? Well, if we're paying attention to our children, we can find out very early on if this is a child who may go to college, or this is a child that's going to go and just get a certification, maybe like a real estate license or something like that. But if you feel like your child is definitely someone who's going to go to college, you can start that process very early on with planning and putting things in place. Do your research, okay? We're going to be talking in a couple of minutes on the next slide about viable options that you can use in order to pay for college versus getting loans. Explore other college options. So what exactly does this mean? You can get your associate's degree from a community college. That cuts off 2 years of expenses at a four-year institution. Right now, the average cost, and this can be higher or lower, at a four-year institution is approximately $30,000 a year. So you actually have students, children, families that are coming out with approximately $120,000 or more in student loan debt before they've gotten their first car, their first house, their first job, their first apartment, or anything. And that is definitely not the way to go. Another part of our research is to determine, is it more beneficial to go to a public college versus a private college? Okay. Ensure that the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, is completed properly and timely. I always tell people all the time, the FAFSA opens October 1st every single year, and that is actually when it needs to be completed. If you're waiting until November, December, January, February, until your child is about to graduate, that is extremely late. And by the time your FAFSA application is processed, there could possibly not be any funding left, or you may not get awarded the amount you would have gotten had you actually done it on October 1st when the application opened. And the next thing you can do to avoid student loan debt is to schedule a consultation with a professional or a college coach. That is someone like me who starts working with families in middle school to maneuver the entire college process. Sometimes we don't know what to do. Other times things have changed so much since we were in school that by the time our kids get to school and get ready to go to college, we have no clue how to help them. And they miss out on a lot of opportunities, all because we're not willing to get help or pay a little money on the front end. I always tell people it's better to hire a consultant, pay them a small fee, than to be stuck with $120,000 worth of student loan debt once they graduate from college. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about some alternatives to student loans. All right, so one of the first ones is scholarships and grants. So scholarships and grants both do not have to be paid back. So I always tell people this is definitely the way you want to go when the time comes to get your child into college, okay? Both are awarded for a specific period of time. So when you're receiving a scholarship or a grant, oftentimes it's going to be awarded maybe for 1 year, or it could be under renewable term, meaning that you may have to meet some qualifications in order for that grant or that scholarship to be renewed every single year until your child graduates from college. And I tell people, always make sure that you read all of the information inside of your grant or scholarship application before you accept it, so that you understand the terms and conditions. Also, grants are usually given based on financial need, whereas scholarships can be awarded for a variety of things, anything from merit-based to athletic to community service to extracurricular activities. Now we're going to talk about some ways to fund your child's college education. One is called my screen is small, guys, hold on. The 529 or the Education Savings Plan, okay? So both of these are tax deferred, okay? So that's the good thing. However, there is a humongous difference between the two. 529s do not have contribution limits, whereas the ESA does, okay? And I have those right here on the screen. So pretty much, as it says here, where is it? Right here, okay. Does not exceed, as long as your 529 contributions do not exceed $235,000 to $520,000. This is based upon each state. Each state decides what the total amount is that you can contribute to a 529. So if you decide to go the 529 route, you need to check the requirements for your particular state to see what that is. However, with an ESA, the limit is $2,000 per child per year. So as you can see, that is not very much money at all if you decide to go the ESA route. 529s have no age restrictions, whereas ESAs have an age restriction. Funds must be used by 30 years old, and contributions must be made before the child is 18 years old. So with under 529s, you're going to have a lot more flexibility than what you're going to have under an ESA. 529s do not have income restrictions to invest, whereas ESAs have income restrictions. It's $190,000 for married couples filing jointly and $110,000 for single filers. So in the event, it goes back to the first slide where we talked about make sure you're doing your actual research so you can ensure that you're picking the plan, the policy that's best for your child and your particular situation. Next slide, please. All right, so before we open the floor for questions, I certainly can't end this presentation sponsored by my church without some biblical reference. So there are actually some at the bottom of the slide. The first one is 1 Timothy 6:9, and that says, those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. So what is this saying? In other words, we know there is nothing wrong with pursuing better financially for ourselves and for our families, but if it comes at the expense of racking up a whole bunch of debt, not spending time with our family, and it takes precedence over our relationship with God, then you're bound for destruction. The second verse says, Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whomever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. So in other words, the love of money is not good. Okay, we've heard that over and over again. We all know it takes money for us to live and take care of our responsibilities. But when money owns us and we're willing to do anything to get it, that's definitely a problem. Okay. And the last one that I put on the slide is Luke 14:28. And it says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? So bam, there it is. Is it in your budget? That's what the scripture says. Can you afford it? So these are just 3 scriptures that kind of backs up what I've been talking about tonight. Before I open up questions, I just want to thank you all for allowing me to share tonight. If any of you would be interested in booking a one-on-one session, if you can go to the next slide, please. All of my point of contact information is right here on this side. I do specialize in helping families prepare for college and maneuver the entire college process, starting as early as 8th grade. However, I also work with individuals and families with money management and budgeting. So at this time, I will address any questions that may have been sent into the chat, or if someone wants to raise their hand and ask a question.
All right, that was awesome, Keisha Hawkins.
Thank you.
And you crack me up. You say 37 days to your vacation.
Yes, I'm ready to go.
I hear that. So let's see. Akia Kelly has one. How does one start a 529?
All right. So a 529, there are some banks that you can go talk to your financial advisor at the bank, especially credit unions. Credit unions are really big. And if you have an account already at that particular bank or credit union, oftentimes the advisement that comes along with opening one is free. So I would tell you to start with your bank or credit union to get one started. But do your research before you go in, because you want to be able to ask intelligent questions or get them to explain different parts of what you may not understand. And just to give you a little bit more information on a 529, once you put the money in the account, for example, I mean, most of y'all know my baby boy Malik is on a full ride at North Carolina A&T. So we have not really had to use much of the money from his 529, but 529 expenses can be used for anything associated with college. So if they need books, if they have to have a computer in order to do something for class, oftentimes you can write it up in a way that if they're doing an internship somewhere and you can't get all of the housing covered, but the internship is required in order for them to graduate, you can use the money for that. So it's for certain expenses. So when you look up the 529, it'll tell you exactly what it is. Now, the money that will be left in my son's 529, he can actually will that to a child of his. I can turn around and use it if I want to, because I am the one who started the 529. Or if he decides he wants to go get some type of a certification, his real estate license or Microsoft certification or something of that nature. As long as you are using the money for educational purposes, you can turn around and use the money inside of a 529.
Wow, that's awesome. I'll go to Imani Eden Clemens, it looks like. Please unmute. I see your hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, yes, we can.
Hi, so I do have a question. Thank you so much for your presentation, Keisha. So my question is, it's pretty specific, so I may have to just like follow up with you, but I'm interested in going to law school. And I know that's expensive in itself. So like, is there any like resources or like a website you recommend? Like, you know, like what's your idea or your take on finding scholarships?
So that probably is something you would have to contact me directly, but I can give you an answer. So pretty much once you figure out where you want to go, how much it's going to cost, and all those kinds of things, if you're working, there are so many different ways to find scholarships. And it's not one particular answer. So it's kind of hard to answer that question. However, like I said, if you wanted to talk to me offline, my information is right here. You can also go on my website and kind of peek around and see what I do, read testimonials and all that good stuff. And we can have a conversation.
Awesome.
So I don't just work with children. I had a phone call from someone earlier tonight before I got on this call, and she was saying, "Do you only work with kids? I saw your information." No, I work with people who are getting their PhD, people who are working on getting their master's degree. It's just I specialize in working with children because the majority of your funding, if you're definitely looking for a full ride, is going to come when a child is graduating from high school. However, there's plenty of money out there under different circumstances in certain situations.
Amen. Kia Henderson, unmute your mic, and we'd love to hear your question. Kia Henderson.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ms. Keisha. Thank you for the lesson today. My question is with credit cards. When you're selecting a credit card, what are things that you should look for in picking one, or like red flags to say, okay, maybe this might not be the card for me? Like what are some kind of guidelines to that?
So you definitely do not want to pick a black card or a credit card that's going to require you to pay all your purchases off in 30 days. Although that's the goal, you should not be charging anything that you can't afford to pay off in 30 days. However, there are some credit cards where you absolutely must pay it off every single month, or they're going to slap you with a whole bunch of fees. So you definitely want to check on the interest rates, you know, whatever they're charging. Some credit cards might say 20%. Other credit cards may say 29%. I don't think I've paid anything on a credit card No interest, no late fee, no anything. And probably, I don't know, probably about 20 years, maybe. I pay my credit card off every single month because I'm only charging what I can afford to be swiping. So and you also want to look at rewards. Rewards come in handy. Sometimes you can use the rewards that you earn from month to month for purchasing gift cards. Those are really good, like for my nieces and nephews during Christmas. I give all of them gift cards because pretty much I've been swiping all year and paying it off. So now I have enough points where I can probably get 4 or 5 gift cards to give out to my niece and nephews. Or I've accumulated enough points where I might get one free airline ticket for as much travel as I do. So basically, you want to find the credit card that works best for you. It's not going to have a really high interest rate on it, and one that is not going to require you to pay it in full every 30 days, although that is the goal.
Amen. All right. Kia Kelly, do you have a budget template? Do you have a budget template you can provide, Keisha?
Excuse me, y'all. If y'all weren't on the call earlier, I was telling y'all I have an asthma flare up, so I'm doing a lot of coughing. I did really well to get through everything without coughing, but now it's coming. Excuse me. I do have a budget template that I typically work with my clients on when they book a session. Yes, but if that isn't something you'd be interested in doing, you can also Google sample budget templates, and they're out there.
Amen. Let's see. I can't see the whole name, but the hand is raised. Deborah. Deborah, please unmute yourself. Hey, Deborah.
Hi.
Hey.
This is hi Keisha. Thank you for your presentation. This is Miss D.
Hey, D.
Hi. I was wondering for credit card, like if you trying to pay off a credit card because the APR is going up, is it a good idea to transfer it to, like, for example, Discover has an 18-month no interest credit card and work at paying it off during that 18 months?
Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. Yes. And so that is a way to get out of credit card debt, only if you're going to do the right thing. Because if you in a lot of people's situations, like when I sit with clients and I sit with couples or college kids specifically, they transfer it to a credit card where they have 0 interest and then they don't pay it off within the time frame. So now you double that. So yes, I always recommend that if you can get a credit card where you can transfer for 12 months, 15 months, 18 months with no interest, go ahead and transfer that from that credit card, close that one out and put that balance on the new credit card, but ensure that you pay it off within the time frame that they're giving you.
Okay, so closing the other one out, will that harm your credit rating?
So this is tricky, okay? So it's really, really tricky. So the way sometimes this stuff works, it just depends on the credit card itself. You never really know what's going to happen. So I was sharing before the call that I had an 850 credit score for like 8 months. That's the perfect credit score. That was on my bucket list. I was determined I was going to get that. So for like 8 months, I had an 850. And then after that 8-month period, I just checked like last month, it went down to an 849. I just say they don't want me to be great. I don't know why it dropped. Nothing has really changed or anything like that. So it honestly just depends on what they decide to do. Sometimes I tell people, if you're it's better to close it out. However, sometimes if you're going to transfer it and just leave it as a 0 balance, let it sit there for a while, but just don't put anything else on it before you close it out.
Okay.
Because sometimes it takes time for them to start reporting on the other one to give that one some time where it won't penalize you. So it just depends. Everything is based upon like your debt to income ratio, how much do you really make versus how much is on the credit card, you know, and stuff like that. You always don't want it. You don't want to have no 50% of your balance maxed out on your credit card. You want to try to stay at 30% or less,
Right.
or whatever the maximum amount is on your credit card. But like I said, for me, I use my credit card like a debit card. So if I go out, you know, let's say I go to the movies on Monday, I go to the mall on Wednesday, and on Friday, I go out to dinner or I go hang out with some friends. I've swiped all of that on my credit card, but I'm going to pay that next week. Right. Only because I had already budgeted for what I was putting on the card anyway, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, it does. But I also found out that because this card I was trying to get rid of, I put it on I froze it and just continually paid on it. Now that it's down at a lower level, but I was told by the credit union that kind of hurt you too because you weren't using the card.
They gonna always tell you something.
Well, okay.
So what I say is we just have to do what we feel like is best. So
Okay.
what I would recommend that if you are going to move that balance from that credit card to the other credit card, if you don't want to close it out right away, then just don't swipe anything else. Put the credit card in the drawer, cut it up, or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
And then give some time for reporting on the new credit card before you officially close out the other one. Because it can hurt you if it's totally just sitting there like for years. If you left
Yeah.
it open for like 6 months until the reporting comes on the other card, that's perfectly fine. But what is the
Okay.
point of keeping a card open that you know you're never going to use again?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're
Appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome.
Hope-
All right, Kia Henderson. Kia Henderson, please unmute so we can hear your question. Kia Henderson.
Sorry, hopefully this is my last one. So with the credit cards, I know you're just, I'm really enjoying this session, so thank you.
You're welcome.
With the credit cards, I heard you just say that you'll pay it off like a week later or 2 weeks later. Is there a certain time that you should wait? So say like, okay, I'm charging all of my expenses to my debit card, my credit card, and I have the money set aside. Is there a certain time that you should wait? Like, should you wait until they report it on the card and then like pay it off? Or should I just, okay, boom, I swiped it on my credit card on Monday, on Friday, I'm paying it off? It's like, what's the best way to do that?
So reporting can be different depending upon because you're going to have 3 different credit scores depending upon which credit bureau. It's really crazy to me. You have three credit bureaus, and you can have a different score for every single one. So what I would say is if you're going to do it that way and you're trying to increase your credit score, you probably want to make sure that it's paid before the billing cycle, the end of the billing cycle.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So typically, like I said, the billing cycle is 30 days. So just put in your mind to pay your credit card every 28 to 29 days. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
For me, now when I go on a trip, I swipe the whole trip. And then I get back and I add up everything. I already had the money set aside, so I know exactly what I spent because I had a budget before I left. Okay. And so I do sometimes allow that to sit for a little bit because that's probably a much bigger charge than, $30 at dinner or $20 at the movies, just to give a little bit more money to report, opportunity to report.
Gotcha. So is it like the bigger the sum is better, like those $20, $30, they're not really worried about that? But
They're not really worried about that. But when you're trying to establish credit, so my son is 20 and he has a 785. But how we got him there, I'll go ahead and share this too. When he was in high school, I made him a writer, an authorized user on my credit card. However, he's never had my credit card. So I only recommend doing this, parents, if you have a good credit score. Now, if your credit is jacked up, do not I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't have said jacked up. If your credit is not good, is messed up, is low, do not put your children as an authorized user on your credit card because you're going to mess them up before they even get started. However, my son has been a writer on my credit card since he was 16 or 17, and he's 20 now. And now he has his own one credit card, a Discover College student credit card. And so between the two, we've been able to get his score up to a 785, and we're trying to get him up to an 800 so that he'll be able to do whatever he needs to do when he graduates in May. So you kind of have to pay attention to your credit to kind of see if you do this, if it goes up or down. Because like I said, the objective from the credit card companies is to keep us in debt. So I remember one time we sold a house before we bought another one. My credit took a ditch because we paid the loan off to sell that house to buy a new house. It didn't fall all the way down, but if my credit score goes down 10 points, I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Did somebody get my, access to my card, or are they messing with my credit? Because I pay attention to my credit like that. I don't know. It's just something about me. I'm a little anal. So
Vacation starts in 37 days.
37 days, bro. 37 days, I'm out of here.
Amen. Well, look, this has been awesome, Keisha. You've been very generous with your time tonight. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make a last call questions. Raise your hand if you got any questions, and if not, we will transition to our close.